Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and today this is another unexpected video, one that I don't think we were actually anticipating, or not that y'all weren't anticipating. As always, likes, comments, subscriptions, they genuinely do help this channel grow, and I greatly appreciate each and every one of y'all. What I wanted to talk about today was the demographics and specifically why I don't think the top line results for the polls are lining up with their crosstabs. Because if we look at African American and Hispanic Latino turnout, and I'm not going to touch the white stuff, even though I think people are slightly underpolling Trump support for amongst white college graduates, and I'll explain why in just a second. But if we put up what Trump is polling at on average among the black community, let's flip that to the 11% mark, which is what the average was the last time I checked. Well, that flips Michigan. That solely flips Michigan. And I mean, it's still a 5 million vote loss for Trump in the popular vote, but that should be a little bit of a shock. And by the way, with that 11%, there's still about 8% of the black vote that says they are undecided in this election. Now, chances are that's not going to break for Donald Trump. He may only get, a tenth of that undecided black vote, but even then, that would put him at around 12%. Whoops. So let's just be generous and put him at 12, okay? Fair. By the way, that flips the election because of Florida. Yep. If Trump hits that 12% that he's been polling at amongst the black voters, he wins the election. By the way, he's losing by about 3 million nationally. Yeah, so Democrats really, and that's without changing any of the other stuff, which is, I believe, what I think most people are expecting. Since it started. Okay, this is adjusted for the demographic change since 2016. I don't know where they're it's non-votes and turnout figures, 48, okay, I'm not sure where these baseline figures are, but they're kind of general areas. Trump was at 66% in 2016 among white voters without a college degree. We're estimating, I think most people are estimating that he gets 69%. Also, I love how that's hilarious. That is kind of interesting how that one works out. Because, interesting. Anyway, but the average that I've seen amongst Hispanics, doing some extrapolation and all that, can be anywhere from, 33% of the Hispanic vote, which, by the way, would put him at his basically a literal repeat of 2016, all the way up to, I've seen above 40. I've seen 43%, at least based on one or two polls. I'm estimating around 36%, 36 or 37%. And again, this carries about 5 or 6% undecided with that group, which has a little bit more of a propensity to vote for a Republican. So let's say he gets 2% of that 5, So that would put him at 39%. There we go. And this is without changing the turnout figures. This is without changing any of the white vote. So I'm just going to do that just to make sure. Now, I haven't seen any reliable polling for Asian voters. But if Donald Trump really does reach what he's been polling at with non-white voters, he's pretty much a shoo-in for re-election. And the reality is, he could lose a little bit of his white support and still be competitive. There we go. Now, here's why I think that polls are also favoring Biden right now, and I've noticed this. Polls that put a great effort into weighting by the region of the state have been showing a more favorable view towards Trump than polls that just report the statewide result. And I think there's a few reasons for this. Number one, if you call a state, and let's use a state like Texas as a good example, right? If you're calling and not really focusing on trying to figure out who's winning the House races there, say if you're doing polling, I don't know, Texas 23rd, which is kind of in the extreme rural west of Texas, you're only going to poll that district. You're not really going to poll people who live outside of that district. However, if you're polling the state in general, you're going to call a few area codes. Texas is big enough that it has a few area codes. If you poll the one that's centered around San Antonio, the 210 area code, the overwhelming majority of your voters are going to be living in San Antonio proper, in Bayard County, as well as the surrounding 2 or 3 counties. This means you're going to get a sample that, even if you weight it for the state's demographics as a whole, or your expected turnout demographic model, you're still going to get a sample that is more favorable to the Democrat than the Republican. And you can actually be off by doing that. This isn't to say that one method is better than the other. It is to say that you need to be careful when choosing a method like a method of trying to call someone based off of the state that you're calling in. Yes, the majority of votes in Texas are going to be around Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. But that doesn't mean that voters in the rest of the state, Amarillo, Katy, Texas, I guess, Plano, Del Rio, El Paso, Brownsville, Corpus Christi, that those voters don't exist or that they're not being accounted for. If you look at another state, let's say, I don't know, Virginia. I'm almost positive. Now, Virginia does have a few area codes. There's the 540, the 276. Now, I forget what the DC and Tidewater, the Nova and the Tidewater area codes are. But if you're calling Virginia, you're going to be mostly calling people who live in those 2 area codes, with some in the 540 and 276 area code. Breakdown. And 276 also includes parts of West Virginia. It includes a few other areas as well. So you're going to be getting responses mostly from Northern Virginia and the Hampton Roads, Norfolk area. Yeah, you'll get a little bit of Virginia Beach. Yeah, you'll get some of the exurbs and the outlying areas up towards the Richmond area. But you're going to be missing a lot of vote in Southwest Virginia. You're going to be missing a lot of the vote, west of Roanoke and in the Appalachian area. So you do have to be careful. Now, is this to say that it's wrong? No, it isn't. Again, you need to weigh the factors of which state you're in, whether or not you can get away with it. For example, in New York, it's probably reasonable to say that if you just call the 5 boroughs in New York City, you'll get a roughly representative sample of the state as long as you call a decent number of people upstate. Because New York City accounts for about 48% of the state's population. Similar things happen in Illinois. Cook County accounts for 48% of Illinois' population. So You can be reasonably okay. But when the population of that city and the rest of the area are a little bit different, trying to think of a good example of that. That exists in the country. Arizona, where you've got Maricopa County accounting for most of the state's population and the votes. You get a situation where if you call the wrong neighborhoods, your poll could be very, very off. So this is why I think pollsters should focus more on where they're calling, not than they have been, and not just trying to match the state's demographics. Now, some will say, well, we sampled this many rural voters and we weighted them proportionally. But not all voters in each group are the same. For example, there are blue counties in extremely rural areas. Look at the Iron Range in Minnesota as a prime example. Or the counties of western Massachusetts. And then there can be urban counties that surprisingly vote for Republicans. Not all urban precincts, but, the county that contains a major urban area still votes Republican. Duval County in Florida, home to Jacksonville, is a good example of that. Virginia Beach, historically, has been a Republican stronghold. Tarrant County, that's Fort Worth. Yeah, Tarrant County is Fort Worth. Maricopa County in Arizona, for example, aka Phoenix, is another good example of that. So if we just put this at 50-50, we get, interestingly enough, New Hampshire flipping. Donald Trump did actually carry whites with a college degree in 2016, and that was probably the reason why he won. Now, again, this is almost a dead repeat of 2016. And if we bump up those numbers to where I expect Trump to be amongst the non-white voters, doesn't really change things, but all of a sudden it does put him winning the popular vote. And Maine's 2 votes are with very competitive. Virginia, competitive. Minnesota, extremely competitive. Illinois, not competitive, but shockingly close. So as you can see, this is why I'm skeptical of the top line results for the polls. I think if we try to match what the crosstabs or what the top line results are saying for Biden winning, we have to drop Trump down a healthy amount. Amongst every group. And that's out of, what is that, 133 million votes. And an 11 million vote difference is about a 10% lead for Joe Biden. And hilariously, this is actually what my model has been showing recently, is something similar to this. But again, looking at the crosstabs, I'm finding it hard to believe. Also, hilariously, I think this is a little bit glitchy. But whatever. If we say that Trump gets about 70% of whites without a college degree, is doing okay with whites without whites with a college degree. Losing it by only 1 or 2 points, which is reasonable. Hits that magic 10% figure, just 10%, with black voters. And it actually does hit, 35%. I'm going to be, giving the benefit of the doubt to Biden with black voters or with Hispanics and black voters, and saying that Trump's probably not going to reach his polling figures with them. But I think 35% with Hispanics and 10% with African Americans are well within the realm of possibility, and I would say probable. This would be a shock, yes. By the way, again, Trump would win the popular vote in this scenario. But this is why I think we need to be careful when looking at the top line results, especially when we look at the crosstabs. Because if the crosstabs really are showing Trump doing this well with minority voters, I didn't change the votes here all that much, and Trump is known to perform better amongst whites in his polling numbers, both college educated and not college educated. So if he really is performing this well with minority voters, and by the way, I haven't even touched Asian voters, which could significantly swing a state like Colorado, maybe Oregon, Washington, won't really affect California, might affect Virginia and some of these states, but not really. Nevada as well. But, it is what it is when you look at the demographics. So just be very cautious when looking at the crosstabs and the top line, and try and find the happy middle ground between the two. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching, and I guess the best word would be indulging in this Data Junkies spreadsheet world for this video, and I want to see y'all later tonight for live streaming. Hopefully everything has gone well and Georgia has beaten Arkansas in college football today, so I hope that works out. Take it easy, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help. I greatly appreciate them. Have a very nice day, and I'll see you later tonight. Bye-bye.